Okay. Welcome everyone to the Climate Strong Islands Network biannual member gathering. Um, we are so glad that you could join us this afternoon for this important presentation. You're going to hear from not only members of our steering committee, but also members who are partners in the field working on climate resilience and adaptation projects that are community-based and supportive of all the members of their island communities. We are a network that represents U.S. islands affiliated with territories and states. And so we're glad that you could join us today. I have the pleasure to introduce one of our co-chairs, Tina Sablan, who will be speaking with us first. Tina is the co-chair policy manager at the Legal Clinic in Hawaii, a nonprofit that advances justice for immigrants and migrants through legal services, community education, and policy advocacy. Some of her work sits at the intersection of climate and immigration, as immigrant and migrant communities are often disproportionately impacted by climate change and disaster, and climate-related events can drive displacement and migration. Tina remains actively involved in environmental advocacy in the Marianas, where she served in their house as a delegate, and through her service on the boards of Friends of the Mariana Trench and Tano Tasi Jan Todu. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Tina Sablan.
Thank you so much, Liz, and Hafaday, aloha, and welcome to everyone here. Thank you for joining this gathering of the Climate Strong Islands Network. I've served as co-chair of the steering committee for CSIN since 2024, alongside my friend and colleague, Jen Valulis from the U.S. Virgin Islands. You'll hear more from her later. Next slide, please, Mickey. So CSIN's mission is to build an effective coalition of U.S. island communities working across sectors and geographies to drive more resources to islands and advocate for policy that truly represents local needs and opportunities. Helping island communities become stronger, more resilient, and better connected is why the Climate Strong Islands Network exists. So since our last all-member gathering a few years ago, this network has continued to grow and evolve. We've expanded our membership, elected new leadership, and welcomed new voices and perspectives across island communities. We transitioned to a new fiscal sponsor, the Resources Legacy Fund, which has strengthened our organizational foundation and positioned us well for continued growth. We've also developed new partnerships, including with the Great Lakes Island Alliance. And in September last year, our co-chair Jen delivered the keynote at the Great Lakes Islands Summit on Beaver Island. Next slide. So I'd like to take a moment to recognize the members of our steering committee who really reflect the incredible geographic diversity and expertise within this network. So from the U.S. Virgin Islands, our co-chair Jen Valulis from the Division of Fish and Wildlife, and Deanna James of the St. Croix Foundation for Community Development. From Puerto Rico, Lirio Marquez of the Vieques Conservation and Historical Trust. From the Aleut community of St. Paul Island, Alaska, Marissa Merculia from the Office of Justice and Governance Administration. And then our steering committee advisors, Jason Donofrio from the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation and Kate Brown from the Global Island Partnership, or GLISPA. Our partnerships extend beyond U.S. borders, and necessarily so. Climate change affects us all around the planet. And through CSIN's membership in GLISPA, and with Kate as our advisor on the steering committee, we've connected to island leaders around the world who are advancing bold solutions to many of the climate challenges that we face in the U.S. CSIN's purpose has always been larger than any one island or territory. The network connects island communities to learn from each other, elevate our shared priorities, and amplify our collective voice in shaping policies that strengthen the resilience, connectedness, capacity, and long-term thriving of our islands. Next slide. Over the past year, CSIN has completed a refresh of our National Islands Policy Framework, a document that reflects the priorities of island communities around the U.S., provides a roadmap for federal policy across 7 key issue areas. These 7 issues include clean, reliable, and affordable energy, watershed management and coastal resilience, food and water security, disaster preparedness and response, waste management, sustainable marine economies, and transportation. We'll explore these themes further during our breakout sessions today. Policy is ultimately about people. And while CSIN's reach is both national and global, our work is also deeply local, informed by the lived experiences of islanders. So I'm going to shift gears now to get a bit more local and personal. Next slide, please. Last April, I returned to my home island of Saipan following Supertyphoon Sinlaku, one of the strongest typhoons ever recorded in the Marianas and the most powerful storm on Earth this year. Before my flight home, I joined volunteers in Hawaii working with the Micronesia Climate Change Alliance to collect 1,000 pounds of immediate relief supplies to pack and send by air to Saipan. Once on the island, I volunteered with the community-based organization United for Saipan to help conduct damage assessments and distribute relief supplies directly to affected families. Growing up in the Marianas, we are accustomed to typhoons. Typhoons are part of life. But many of us have observed that the storms of the past decade have become more intense, more destructive, and increasingly difficult to recover from before the next one arrives. Over the past decade, the Northern Marianas has been struck by 3 major typhoon disasters. What made Sinlaku an unusual monster of a storm is that it sat with its eyes squarely on the islands of Saipan and Tinian for several days. Next slide, please. Tens of thousands of people were forced to shelter for that long, wherever they were, while rooftops were torn away, windows shattered, water seeped into every crevice, and trees toppled over. The damage was comprehensive. Sinlaku knocked out buildings, water, power, ports, and communications, and it's taken weeks to restore services in most places. Even today, nearly 3 months since the storm, thousands of families are without power, including in my village of Tanapik, where my parents live. The power grid continues to be unstable, unreliable, and extremely expensive. Island-wide outages still occur, and the local utility recently doubled the fuel charge for electricity to more than 40 cents per kilowatt hour. Next slide, please. What has struck me most during the recovery isn't just the damage itself. It's the reminder that disasters expose the vulnerabilities that already existed. Aging infrastructure, fragile energy systems, economic challenges, dependence on global supply chains and imported fossil fuels. Disasters reveal who was already living paycheck to paycheck, who was already experiencing food insecurity or living in unsafe housing, which families depended on medical equipment that required electricity, which families were caring for elders or children with health conditions or disabilities, which households lacked immigration status and were afraid to seek help. Recovery isn't just about rebuilding what was lost. It's also about confronting the systems that made communities vulnerable in the first place. Disasters reveal something else that is equally powerful. They remind us that resilience is rooted in community. When supply chains are disrupted, ports are damaged, power systems fail, and government resources are stretched thin, islanders lean on one another. After Sinlaku, I saw resilience. I saw people who had lost their homes volunteering to help others who had lost theirs. Diaspora communities organizing fundraisers and relief drives thousands of miles away. Nonprofits and mutual aid groups rushing in to fill gaps that no single institution could fill alone. Those relationships are just as important as physical infrastructure. And that spirit of collaboration and mutual support is what this network is about. Next slide, please. So I'm looking forward to today's conversations. We'll soon hear from 2 remarkable island communities, Vieques and St. Croix, as they share their experiences about building resilience from the ground up, strengthening island leadership, partnering with philanthropy, and helping their neighbors become better prepared for the future. I know their experiences will resonate with many of us, and I hope that you'll share your own stories during our breakout sessions and continue building the relationships that make this network so valuable. Thank you all for being here, for the work you do in your own communities, and for the commitment you bring to strengthening island resilience together. And with that, I turn the floor back to Liz.
Thank you so much, Tina. That was a beautiful opening, and I am excited for Pedro and Deanna to be able to share a bit about those community-based solutions that you've talked about, especially in after a disaster. So, without further ado, we'll get into our Inspired by Islands section of our presentation today. Pedro Ayala is going to start us off. He is the co-coordinator of the Vieques Conservation and Historical Trust Resiliency Project on the island of Vieques in Puerto Rico. Pedro has served at the trust since 2014, and from 2018 to 2021 worked with FEMA. He is an active member of the Vieques Island Amateur Radio Club, and he combines his technical communication skills with counseling experience to support individuals, families, and community resilience efforts in Vieques. Pedro will be talking about the community services provided by the Trust Barbosa Center for the Environment, which you see in his background there. Environment and resiliency during disasters, including tactical organization strategies, training, supplies, human effort, and stress, as well as equipment. So Pedro, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and have this chance to share with you the things that we've been trying to do in our community and how we serve everybody in our island. Before starting, I have like to acknowledge that I'm joined here by Alberic Medina. He's a co-coordinator for the Resiliency Project. He's also the president and founder of the Vieques Island Amateur Radio Club, and which we've been working together for the last 5 years or so. And this is what we try to do in our island. Next slide, please. Before explaining or talking about what we do in the island, we need to go back to Hurricane Maria. That experience here in our island took us to understand and to rethink the way we did things at the Vieques Conservation Trust. The mission of the trust is to foster, protect, and defend the natural, and environmental and the historical resources of our island. And after the hurricane, there was very little that we could do in terms of history. Environmental conservation was really uphill because everything was destroyed because of the hurricane. And then the preserving of the natural resources brought us to thinking of one thing, which was our best and most important resource of all. It was the people. And that took us to think that we needed to work with the real needs of the community and the people of our island. And that brought us to what we started doing. Next slide. So we realized the three major needs that the community had was water, energy, and communications. Within those needs, we try to move forward within our capabilities to help the community. So we started working around, and because of grants that we get and donations that were made to the trust, we were able to start building an infrastructure that we could help the people of the community. We started by adding 2,000-gallon cisterns with a purification system that was connected to the water line that we could fill up and filter and give to the community. And they also had a water collection element where we could collect the water from the rain, filter it, and offer it to the community. That was a little bit limited because of the reality of the rain or the availability of the regular water line working within our island. But we worked on that, and we were ready and are ready to supply at least 1 gallon of water to 2,000 people in our island in case of an emergency. The other element that we were thinking about was the energy. We were able to get a photovoltaic system and set it up in a way that the people from the community could get to our center and connect their devices and have a little bit of energy within their needs, so they could either connect with their devices or at least charge up a flashlight or something that they could go back home and use it within the emergency. Thankfully, along the years, we've been able to upgrade our system to really be able to provide this energy support for the people of the community. And then the communications element. We started just by trying to participate on the emergency community communications around the island. And by doing that, we started learning about the available systems and the things that we could do to add to that communication element that we were doing. At first, we just wanted to connect every community. So in case of an emergency, if any community had any special need, they could provide that information to the Central Municipal Office of Emergency Management, and they will help each community along the information that they have. And while doing that, we started learning about other systems and about other things that are within those communications capabilities that we had. And we started building on that in ways that we could further help not only the community, but also the municipality and even statewide. And that's what we're trying to do. Next slide. So we started doing community work in three major elements. We started doing assessment, trying to help every person, every people in the community to know what they need, to see what they had, what they didn't have, and how they could start working to fulfill those needs in case of an emergency. Whether they needed to strengthen their communications or they needed to work on something to have a small water catchment system in their houses, or whether it was something to be able to get some energy, whether it was a power bank, a battery, or something more complicated that they wanted or could do to be prepared for the emergency. Then we started working on training. We started inviting people into our center so they could be prepared. Community trainings like community emergency response teams, CPR training, communications training, and all the things that they could learn. We talk about renewable energy, water catchment systems. We also talk to them about food conservation. How could they preserve their foods to have them available in case of emergency? And all those trainings were offered freely to our community. We had resources. We had people coming in from all around the island and offering these trainings and these talks for free to the people of our community. And then we started working with them in development. After we did the assessment, if they wanted to strengthen their communications, we will talk to them about the communication systems or services that were available for them. What could we do to help them know which equipment was right for them, what they wanted to do, and how to get it and install it. And we worked on that development with everybody. We had solar power experts that would advise people what systems would be good for them, what could be better in their individual cases, and how could they get it, how could they work around it to be ready in case of an emergency. And then we realized that community work that started because of Maria and that we were doing around our community was something needed furthermore, not only in the community, but in the whole island. And the government and other NGOs and other organizations were in the same needs that every particular people in the community. So we started working with them in the same way. Next. When we started working with the government, it all started because of the president of the biggest island amateur radio club. He was a member of the emergency response teams in the island. He is an EMT, and he is also the radio dispatch for the emergency office. So we had connections in there. After my experience with FEMA, we had open doors with the local EOC, Emergency Operations Center, and we started giving advice to these organizations around the island. We started with the municipal police. We helped them with their communications, an assessment with the radios they were using, and how could we help them. Once we were done with that stage, it came up the need for communications within the hospital. One of the major things that happened during the hurricane is that the hospital was not able to communicate with the emergency office, with the ambulances, or even with the major hospitals in the main island. So we started working with them so they could strengthen their communications. We work on setting up antennas, new radios, and new services within the hospital so the community will be connected in case of an emergency. After working with the hospital, we did the same thing with the fire department so they could be connected. Again, they could be able to talk with the police and the hospital in case of an emergency, not only a hurricane, but any kind of emergency that we could have, a big fire, blackouts, or whatever. Even when we have car accidents that are major and they need the fire department to be called for that accident, they use the same radio services to be able to work. Then we started strengthening and widening the kinds of services that were established as the State Emergency Management Office and at the Emergency Operations Centers. We work here in Vieques to set up their radios, to add services that they didn't have, like GMRS, which is one of the FCC's radio services. We add those kind of services to their office here in the municipality, and then we were part of the state's training exercises in San Juan to test their communications. We have people from our office in Vieques to go to San Juan and work with them. And also some of the partnerships that we have around the island, we're able to go there and work with the state emergency service to strengthen their communications and to be prepared in case of an emergency. This weekend, we had our first major training exercise here in Vieques, and we had the participation of local, state, even federal agencies, including FEMA. And they were talking to us that they don't have a way to evaluate what we did because this is the first time that it's done island-wide. This is the first time that it's done this way in our island. So they are taking notes of what we did, how we did it, so they can start replicating this in other towns in Puerto Rico and even statewide. And then we finished giving our advice and our help to the local state police. We work with them to advise about radios and communication services that they could use also. Next slide, please. Then we work with NGOs. The Vieques Conservation Trust has a connection with other NGOs and other organizations around the island, and they've been helping these organizations, whether it's on policy, on paperwork, if you were to call it that, even in a fiscal kind of way, helping them to manage and to understand how they do things grant-wise. So we took that relationship with these organizations a step further, and we started assessment with them as well, so they could know what their organizations did, what they wanted to do, and how they were lacking either energy, communications, or any other stuff. And we started assessing them and letting them know what they could do within their needs and how would they do it. We also help them with plan development, not only with emergency plans, but also with operation continuity plans. How could they work around, keep on working their organization, no matter what kind of emergency they could face. And then we also help them with the installation of systems when they got it, when they decide what radios they needed. We would go there, install the antennas, set up the radios, offer training to the users of those radios, and help them with licensing. Because out of the 5 FCC services that we have for communications, 2 of them require a license. One of them you can get online and be licensed. The other one you need to take a class and then take a test to be an official ham radio operator. So we would advise them about which service was good for them, how to be trained into working with the radios, and how to work whether their licenses privileges. And then we keep on adding to the training. We add them to our trainings in our center, to the community emergency response teams, and all the other things that we offer there. So every single member of every single community organization in the island would be as trained and as prepared as the people of the community that we were trying to work with. Next. This is the areas of communication work that we do. The 5 community communication services, which are GMRS, or General Radio Mobile Service, Family Radio Mobile Service, MERS, civil band radio, and ham radio operating. We talk to them about all the opportunities within those services, which suits them better, how could they work with it, and how to get involved in every service to push forward their operations within their areas. VARA and WinLink, Packet and Pactor are digital services that we work, and we started working after serving the community. We learned about these systems that allow us to send data through the radio frequencies. So we can send email, pictures, documents, anything that we need to share with organizations or offices like FEMA, emergency services, anything, request, documents about the state of the island. We can share all of that through the radio waves without having internet service or cellular data or anything like that. So we use a program that transforms our data from our computers into radio frequencies. They are sent through the radio, and either somebody with the same system can receive it, but also if they can go through something that we call a digital portal, they go through that and they are transformed back into data. And people that don't have these services, you could be in Alaska and having your regular computer or your regular cell phone, and we would send this data through the radio frequencies, and you'll get it on your regular email service. You can reply through your regular service, and they will be transformed again into radio frequencies. We'll get them here, translate them into data, and share them with the offices or the people that we need to do so they could get the help. And also, we're starting to work with MeshTactic and MeshCore, that it's a text message service, local service, that we're starting to work around the island. People can get access to this system and work it with an app in their phone. And even if the cell towers are down and you don't have any cell service, people can get connected and still send text messages through their own devices. And within the emergency, they could keep communicating with their loved ones or the main offices if they need to. Next. And one of the things that we're most proud of, part of doing all this communication effort, it's to maintain the conservation and the, people being mindful of what goes on in our island. And one of the major things that we did within that area is that we built a Modus bird monitoring system. We set up a tower with an antenna within the premises of the Fish and Wildlife Service Reserve, and it helps to monitor migrating birds' activities in our island, and it's been used to record motion information, traveling information from these birds that they could go from Canada down to South America, and they go through our island, and we can register them, see how far they've been traveling, and keep an information of the amount of birds that are coming into our island, whether the numbers are increasing or decreasing because of climate change or any climate venture that it's happening in our island. And that's one of the things that we're really happy about, because we're not only serving the community and helping when community and communication wise, but also we can keep on maintaining our identity as Vieques Conservation Trust and help with what we do, all the systems that we're building to keep on conserving our environment and our island. Next. Here we got some of the pictures that we got from our services. We have the community service visits to the schools, and the lower ones are the ones that we use in our visit to San Juan, to the emergency office, and that's what we serve. Next one. I know I'm taking like 45 extra seconds. This is when we help the local office for managing municipal emergency management office and the hospital. We build their systems, and we help them even with the tsunami towers that we have in our community to advise in case of a tsunami. And the next one. this is the pictures of the Modus Tower that I just talked about and our community and conservation efforts within the resiliency project. Next. That'll be all. Thank you very much.
Pedro, thank you so much for sharing that important information and what a breadth and depth of the work that you're doing. It's incredible. We are going to kind of move along to the east here, and I'm going to introduce Deanna James, who is coming to us from the St. Croix Foundation for Community Development in St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. She is president of the foundation, and she was appointed such in 2015. She and her team manage the foundation's fiscal sponsorship services for over 40 small nonprofits and grassroots initiatives, which operate under the foundation's 501c3 umbrella. Pertaining to what Deanna is going to touch on today, in 2022, the foundation won a U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Secretary's Award for Public Philanthropic Partnerships for its efforts to support a vulnerable population through unconventional means, which Deanna will speak to today. She will walk us through the strategic investments the foundation made at the community level post-hurricanes Hugo and Maria, and how philanthropic organizations in communities across the U.S. could learn from the work that they have done in St. Croix. So without further ado, Deanna James.
Thank you, Liz. Welcome to all. I want to just first start by thanking the network for your commitment to holding this coalition together over the last 7 years. I was at the very first meeting in New York in 2019, and CSIN has been such an incredible asset for all of us island dwellers. At that first meeting that I attended in New York, one of our guests stood up and he said something that continues to inform and inspire our work, which is that those of us who sit on the volatile front lines of climate change also sit on the front lines of many of the solutions. And I think, Pedro's story and St. Croix Foundation's story sort of affirm that truth. So for those who, I'm sure most people know, the Virgin Islands sits in the U.S. Caribbean, the Caribbean archipelago, and we are a population of just under 100,000 people, sorry. Our story, like Pedro's, highlights the power of place-based nonprofits and the importance of philanthropy to deepen our investments in this critical social infrastructure. St. Croix Foundation was founded in 1990, and that's an important timeline because it was immediately following Hurricane Hugo, as our community was navigating what could easily be categorized as one of the Virgin Islands' earliest catastrophic climate disasters. In reality, so many aspects of who we are today as an organization was framed by resilience and by the powerful lessons that we learned in response to Hugo. Since 1990, St. Croix Foundation has been making deep inroads, not just in our community, but also in the field of place-based philanthropy, nationally and regionally, with a broad wingspan and a mission of encouraging philanthropic activity and marshaling resources to serve as a catalyst for the people of the Virgin Islands. St. Croix Foundation serves in multiple capacities that expand far beyond traditional grant making and include nonprofit capacity building, intermediary regranting, data collection. We serve as the territory's Kids Count steward for NEKC Foundation. We do comprehensive community revitalization and block development, and we are the territory's preeminent fiscal sponsor, providing a multitude of direct services to both nonprofits and our local government. And then I think one of the most important roles that we serve in is as a community convener. We do approximately 50 or more convenings annually. Because of the devastating impact of Hugo, our board centered resilience and relationships as operational priorities. They worked to reduce energy dependence and to cultivate deep civic alliances that have served as safety nets for the foundation and for the community that we serve. We solarized our offices and asked the local government to bury surrounding utilities in support of our commitment to organizational and community resilience back in the late 90s. In 2016, shortly after I took the helm of the organization, local nonprofits were stretched to the brink due to a succession of economic disasters coupled with a persistent disinvestment from national philanthropy. With acute recognition that we could no longer grant or program our way out of the deeply rooted structural dysfunctions that we were confronting at that time, we conceived and launched our nonprofit consortium with the overarching goal of fortifying St. Croix civic sector. It was a very ambitious investment through which we sought to move our sector beyond siloed ways of working towards sustained systems level transformation. The consortium officially convened in August of 2016 through a series of table conversations among over 50 local nonprofits that represented different sizes, years of service, and capacities. Divided into 4 subsectors: the arts, the environment, health, and youth services. What we didn't know during the critical early phase of the launch of our consortium was that the foundation was actually investing in one of the most important assets that philanthropy almost never prioritizes, which is time. We committed to just sit in that first year, to hold space and to progress only at the speed of our partners' trust and readiness. While we lost some nonprofits along the way, approximately 30 nonprofits stayed the course. And then, as if in divine order, the merit of our investment was tested in the form of 2 back-to-back disasters, Hurricanes Irma and Maria, which devastated the entire U.S. Caribbean in a matter of 10 days during the summer of 2017. And almost 1 year to the date of the launch of our consortium. Just 30 years after Hugo, which was supposed to be our 100-year storm, Hurricanes Irma and Maria tested the territory and unveiled our community's resilience. With the power of our coalition fully activated by the dire need of our community, nonprofits in the consortium began prioritizing coherent community resilience in full affirmation of the impact of the foundation's 3 decades of investments and our programmatic motto that now governs our work, which is that relationship is the revolution. Immediately after the hurricanes, our nonprofit consortium sprung into action as St. Croix Foundation's fortified headquarters, which was buttressed by buried utilities, became a central hub and home for over 20 civic organizations for over 3 months, enabling nonprofit leaders to plan, collect data, and to share resources, and as well as just to be together. Every decision was a collective one. As other key recovery stakeholders, both federal and local, convened in our offices, together we conceptualized and established resilience hubs, safe places with resources that served our senior citizens, our children, our vulnerable and isolated and economically fragile corners of our community. At the time, while we were responding to the immediate crisis before us, we were also preparing for the next hurricane. But in reality, what we could not have foreseen is that we were actually building fortified infrastructure, both social and physical, to withstand future unpredictable storms in the form of COVID-19 and the catastrophic toxic releases from a failed restart of a shuttered oil refinery. The work we led during this time and since created what we now refer to as a system bypass, innovative new pathways and alternate channels around and through existing broken systems, providing equitable and safe access points to residents' most basic and pressing needs. Today, we have absolute confidence that our holistic approach to community resilience works. Over the course of those 3 months that our nonprofits sat together after Hurricane Irma and Maria, our civic coalition collected the first data sets on the unmet needs of residents for the entire territory. We collected data on the status of nonprofits. We stood up St. Croix's long-term recovery group, which went on to repair more than the central government in the way of housing and home repairs. And we together launched a formal Community Resilience Hubs initiative, which earned the foundation HUD's 2022 Secretary's Award for Public-Private Partnerships. All of these investments proved prophetic when COVID-19 pandemic hit. Our solarized community centers that were constructed by 3 of our local nonprofit partners and the foundation, which prioritized youth and seniors, kept vulnerable populations safe, yet connected through COVID. Our container farm stands awarded to local farmers located in the most underserved neighborhoods ensured isolated populations had access to healthy food in safe outdoor spaces. Our AmeriCorps Vista program enabled nonprofits to sustain operations as needs expanded and resources evaporated. Ultimately, every coherent and collectively conceived program grounded in data and in relationships became life-saving assets during the pandemic. Then, in the spring of 2021, at the height of the pandemic, the foundation further deepened our relationships with and between the nonprofits in our environmental sector, with our boldest collaborative activism, advocating for the protection of economically vulnerable residents who were severely impacted by nearly catastrophic releases from a newly restarted 50-year-old refinery that spewed toxic chemical and oil into the air and onto the roofs and gardens of neighboring communities. Our collective advocacy and activism led the EPA to shutter the highly toxic polluting oil refinery within days of our hosting one of the largest virtual town halls ever convened in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Beyond the closure of the refinery, our collective efforts yielded measurable accomplishments. Each partner has driven a targeted aspect of civic advocacy based on their individual organizational mission, expertise, and priorities, as we collectively strive to build pathways towards an environmentally just future for St. Croix and the U.S. Virgin Islands. One partner helped to cultivate important personal relationships with national environmental justice organizations. Another organization deepened our sector's relationship with national media while leading community organizing efforts. Another activated strategic community alliances with local farmers, growing community focus on food sovereignty and security. The foundation fulfilled our fundamental role as a fiscal sponsor of 2 of the environmental sector partners and as a community convener, hosting 3 community town halls while concurrently building the most substantial national philanthropic network in the organization's and the territory's history. From our inception, St. Croix Foundation has been the connective tissue and backbone support for local nonprofits, offering political cover, credibility, strategic grant-making, fiscal sponsorship, and administrative support to grassroots civic leaders, enabling them to focus on their mission. We continue to nurture collective action and give nonprofits space to convene, to collaborate, to dream, to grow, and to build simple yet innovative new systems that bypass old, outdated ones. As we now look to the future, our focus and priorities have continued to evolve with the volatility of the world and the climate ramping up. We believe that the overarching goal of all communities that sit in the margins and on the front lines can no longer be resilience and sustainability. We believe every resident of vulnerable places, all American Islanders, need to consider what has become our new operational doctrine, which is that sovereignty is resilience. For years, communities like ours have been told that resilience means enduring hardship. We firmly disagree. Resilience cannot simply mean surviving impact after impact. At some point, resilience must evolve into something more radical: sovereignty, the ability to build systems that reduce our dependence on fragile, outdated systems. Because the stark truth is that if or when institutions stop functioning altogether, sovereignty may begin to look like neighbors becoming networks and communities becoming villages once again. I thank you so much for the opportunity to share our story. And I think I speak on behalf of my entire civic community who feel a lot less isolated and more resilient because, or sovereign, I'll start changing my vocabulary, sovereign because of the hard work that you all do at CSIN to strengthen our ties with other U.S. islands who are standing on the front lines of climate change. Thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you so much, Deanna. And just very much appreciate everything that you do there in St. Croix, but especially for our network. Um, I have about 2, 3 minutes here where if there are any questions that any of our attendees would like to ask Deanna or Pedro, you can put those in the chat. And if not, that is okay because we will have an opportunity to come together in discussion during the next portion of our session here. So seeing none, which again, totally okay, we're going to transition into our breakouts and taking cues from what the information that Pedro shared, the information Deanna just shared. We are very interested to hear from you about not only, as we said at the top of the hour, where you're coming from geographically, organizationally, but also what is the most pressing challenge that your island community faces? What is kind of the critical challenge or challenges that you're facing right now that you would like to discuss with this group and make sure that Climate Strong Islands Network is aware of those and perhaps could be helpful through our policy work and advocacy work as well as our partnership work. Also, on the side of opportunity and the inspiring stories that you just heard from Deanna and Pedro, what is a community-based solution that is working in your community? You may already know this, but as part of Climate Strong Islands, much of our sharing, either online in virtual convenings like this or on our website, focus on are inspired by island stories, being able to have information at the ready that can be accessible to our members and beyond about, again, community-based solutions that are working and can be replicable. So with that, I do see one hand raised, and I am wondering, Dr. Felicia, as I call on you, do you have a question for Deanna or Pedro, or was it something for the group that maybe we can share during the breakout? And there you go, you got it.
Greetings, everyone. I'm in Nigeria and it's night time here. So I'm saying good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. I'm very glad to be here. I was very happy when I got this invitation, and then thank you very much, Lisbeth, for connecting me because it was difficult for me to get through the code. But I'm here because I got invitation one, and then in 2022, Climate Strong Island Network supported the organization that I lead, the African Marine Environment Sustainability Initiative, AFMES in Nigeria. They supported us with a fund that was enough for us to have a side chat with the community people of the Niger Delta to discuss the impact of climate change and the reality of it all, so that people will believe that it's real and it's not coming from any other source, but the change we're experiencing, So, and we're able to also hold a talk, the roundtable discussion on the flooding of that year because it was very, very, very bad. And after that, I was making every effort to connect again, but it wasn't possible. So I was very excited that I saw this. Right now, we are working with the community of the Niger Delta with the support of we got from Urgent Action Africa, Net Africa in Kenya. We are now doing the coastal mapping because what you're saying about resilience is a reality, especially the last speaker. In being resilient is just to be able to layer and find out the vulnerability of each community and the environment and be able to intervene before any impact occurs. So I'm actually very, very happy to be here. I had to speak because I'm not from United States. I'm from all the way from Africa, Nigeria, but I'm here. And I believe that for extending the invitation, we are now part of this global initiative. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. And yes, we're happy to support those efforts to connect you together with other partners. And I think actually that is very much the spirit of these breakout rooms we're about to go into. We are going to break out randomly into 3 rooms. You'll see again in the chat the questions that I just went through and that Mickey is posting here. We would ask just, obviously be respectful of each other's time in terms of your sharing and your listening. But we will be in the breakout sessions for now about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll bring you back into the main room. A couple of our steering committee members know to facilitate, but we are looking for folks who would be willing to report back to the group when we come back together after the breakouts. So keep that in mind if you're somebody who would like to collate information and then share back out on behalf of your group. All right, so we are headed into breakouts now, and we'll see you in, again, about 15 to 20 minutes. Everyone, welcome back. I think we have almost everybody here. Okay, terrific. I know that was probably either just enough time or not enough time because there was probably so much to share. I will offer that while we will have just each group give a synopsis of kind of highlights of what they talked about, maybe challenges that folks identified, we, after this, will have some concluding thoughts from our other co-chair, Jen Belulius. And then at 5:30, I will actually turn off the recording, but you're welcome to stay on if there were people that you wanted to connect with that you didn't get a chance to talk with, or if your breakout conversation is one that you wanted to continue for a little bit after our time together here. So just know that that is available to you. But I'd like to start with room 1, which Deanna, Lloyd, Pedro, and Stacy were in. And I would ask, if you don't have your microphone muted, if you could do that at this time. If you're not speaking, great. But from that room, who do we have to report out?
We didn't pick a reporter, but I'll just, I did take some notes. So there was consensus that there's one of the greatest challenges is heat, and the impact of our communities, heat on our communities. Also, the lack of real long-range planning, knowing risk, but continuing to make the same kinds of decisions and investments. And then one of the great ideas that came out, Stacy offered, was that we should have a network of local stories, like success stories, that we should try to figure out how each island can sort of highlight something really powerful and wonderful that's working. Stacy, I don't know if I'm explaining it the right way, but I thought that was like a great idea for CSIN. It's one of the things that I think excites me about this space is that we do have the opportunity to learn from each other. Oops, you're on mute, State. Elizabeth, you were on mute. Sorry.
Thank you. Stacy, is there anything that you wanted to add to what Deanna shared? Okay. Hearing nothing, we'll just keep rolling on. Deanna, that was a great synopsis, and I'm curious to see in room 2. I see Kate, Lirio, I think Felicia. Was there anyone else in that group?
No.
Just the 3? Okay. And then if you'd like to share similarly, things that you discovered either in common or things that we really want to be mindful of as we move forward in our policy work.
Well, I took some notes, but I'm not very sure whether they are quite clear, so either one of them can interrupt me at any time. But one of the things that we spoke about is that one of the main issues in traditional coastal communities or in traditional communities is that the community doesn't have control of the land or the sea. So it is very difficult to manage those spaces. There are, for instance, Felicia mentioned a low-cost way of identifying vulnerabilities in coastal communities by just determining how many people live here, how much infrastructure is here, what kinds of jobs people do, whether they are in a place that could be flooded or subject to a natural phenomenon. And they just do it start collecting that data, and then they can build a map of the vulnerabilities as a low-cost community. They're doing that as part of a project from the World Bank. But one of the main things that was mentioned, and this was mentioned by Kate, is that many of the young people, because of lack of good-paying jobs, because of lack of control of the resources, are leaving these communities. And once they leave, they start a new life somewhere else and they don't come back. So traditional ways of life are getting lost, but also our youth are leaving our spaces. If either Felicia or Kate would like to, correct me. The other thing we talked about was we talked about the landslide that happened near Kate's community, and how the community people were not even acknowledged when the restoration plans were made, because it's like they're not there. They don't exist. So they have put in a proposal for a community food garden to start getting the community prepared for disasters, but also getting the community together, getting the community to work together. Because one of the things that both women said in our conversation is that many people in the communities still don't understand or believe that climate change is real. So it's very hard to educate about climate change if people don't even acknowledge it. So small projects like these start getting people together, start getting people thinking about vulnerabilities, how to deal with them, and climate change. And that's the big take I took out of our long conversation. Okay, do you want to interject something, or Felicia? Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Lario. And then room 3, we had Lizzie, Tina, Jen, and Mickey in that room. Oh, Lizzie, you know what? I see you talking, but the volume isn't coming through. Maybe.
Sorry, that's my bad.
Now you've got
it. So I was chosen as the speaker for our room, and I was going to give this little report. So we spoke about the difficulties territories face in building up emergency preparedness and recovery after the storm, and how those kind of intersect into one another. We also talked about the treatment of territories as a one-size-fits-all in many areas of appropriations and grant funding, which can kind of prohibit effective response. And we talked about the red tape around partnerships with nearby nearby locations that can also hurt economic growth and potential. And then we also talked about the lack of a sufficient environmental data for building baselines, and how there is a need in the territories that we were representing for stronger resiliency hubs after an emergency.
That's terrific. Thank you so much. As I'm quickly typing and looking through all this information, you covered a lot in 15 to 20 minutes here. So thank you. And again, what the network hearing from you, what we will do with this information is, as Tina spoke to earlier, we have this National Islands Policy Framework that was developed now 5 years ago. And the idea was that it would provide kind of the framework, the boundaries for us to explore how best we could advocate at the national level for policies that would impact islands in positive ways that wouldn't kind of go back to the old playbook. We had a chance 2 years ago to revise those 7 key issue areas, and you probably saw in the chat earlier, and we can put it in again, a link to that document on our website at climatestrongislands.org. But policy is ever changing and needing to be looked at again and again, especially with all of the changes that you mentioned in your report out around what's happening with our climate, what's happening with our communities. So this is terrific feedback for us, and we would like to continue to learn from you. So please do think about, if you're not already in touch with us, being in touch with us so that we can continue this conversation. Again, just really appreciate all of you being so candid in your responses and with each other. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jen Valulis, who's going to take us home. Jen is our co-chair with Tina of the CSIN Steering Committee. She is also the Chief of Wildlife for the U.S. Virgin Islands Division of Fish and Wildlife. Most recently, she served as the Executive Director at the St. Croix Environmental Association, and she is a wildlife biologist, and we are very grateful to have her as part of our network. So Jen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Liz. In just our last, I guess, minute or two of our time here, I mostly wanted to wrap up by thanking all of you for joining us today, this afternoon or morning, wherever you are. I want to thank Tina, Pedro, and Deanna for their presentations. I think they were really, um, uh, even though I sort of know the story behind each of them, from conversations with them or being, knowing Deanna closely, I seeing them next to each other is really enlightening to see kind of how different sectors and different people, work in times of disasters and how we can each contribute, something, depending on whatever our field is and whatever our expertise is. Um, in any case, I thank them for their presentations. It's been really great to see everyone again. It's been a little while since we've had a member meeting, and it's always very inspiring and invigorating to hear from, and speak to islanders, and people who are interested in islands from all over. This is certainly a time where the challenges that many of us are facing on our islands generally and specifically related to climate are amplified largely due to the political situation in the world. But I firmly believe that this is when networks like CSIN are most needed to provide support, to share knowledge, strategy, and just kinship, as we face these challenges. I hope that you have found that here this evening and will continue to join us, for future meetings. With that said, for resources, if you would like, please check our website out. There is information about the policy framework that Liz mentioned. There we go. Great. There's our website. And the QR code. Of course, we have social media where we announce upcoming issues, meetings, anything that you might want to know related to what we're doing. If you are further interested in joining us, please let us know. We have a couple of committees meet regularly. One is our policy committee. One is our development committee, and one is an outreach and membership committee where we are going to try and get more folks involved, more folks to these meetings and contributing and just building this network that is so important. If you have questions or ideas or resources that we might be missing or partners that we should be engaging with, we would also love to hear from you. All of this is, this is kind of the joy of a network, is that we can be flexible and we just kind of want to hear, and it's all about, interacting with each other. I also want to extend an invitation. We are having a fall member meeting. We haven't set the date yet, but we're going to try to get back to having meetings twice a year. So you'll see us again, another opportunity to speak with each other and share our stories and have conversations in the fall. If you don't receive our newsletter, please do sign up for it. I believe you can do that on our website. And finally, and most importantly, probably, I want to thank Liz and Mickey for doing the hard work to make this meeting happen. But also, the two of them do basically the heavy lifting to keep CSIN afloat. We really wouldn't exist without them. They keep us together. They do the hard facilitation work that allows us all to think and, talk about ideas and big plans. So I appreciate their help. And like I said, we couldn't do it without them. So I'm going to close with that. Thank you all so much for being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.